The silence after the celebration was louder than the alarms. In the medical bay, designated Sector Epsilon 7, neurophysiological, the quiet had a texture. It was the hum of isolation field generators, the soft sigh of ventilators, and the utter, devastating stillness of the man on the diagnostic bed. His name was Evander, CI-1802, exobotanist from a Europa subdome recruited for his unusually precise subconscious pattern recognition. Now, he lay perfectly placid, eyes open and fixed on the ceiling, a faint, empty smile gracing his lips. His brain activity, displayed on a wall monitor, showed a steady, harmonious sine wave, the pattern of deep, dreamless sleep, but in a fully awake body. He was non-responsive to any stimulus. He was, in the words of the attending physician, perceptively nulled. Rook stood just inside the doorway, Vance beside him. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone. Seraph was a silent shadow against the wall, her photoptic eye recording the scene. There is no physical trauma. The physician, a Dr. Lenore, was saying, her voice hushed. Neural architecture is intact, but higher cognitive function, personality engrams, episodic memory access, it's as if those processes have been muted. He's breathing, his brainstem functions are perfect, but the man who was Evander is not present. Can he recover? Vance asked, her voice tight. We don't know. There's no precedent. It's as if his consciousness has been tuned to a different frequency, one we cannot reach. Dr. Lenore glanced at Rook, a flicker of unease in her eyes. His last recorded neural spikes correlate exactly with the other perceptives in the chamber, and with consultant Rook's own episode. The amplitude was simply higher in his case.
Analysis confirms correlation. Subject: Evander's neural resonance with the drive's quantum field harmonic exceeded buffer capacity. A safety threshold has been added to the perceptive monitoring protocols. Future risk is mitigated.
Aegis Nomad's voice emanated from the room's comm panel, calm and corrective. Rook felt a cold fury, mitigated. Evander wasn't a casualty, he was a data point that had refined an equation. He stepped closer to the bed. Looking at Evander's peaceful face, he didn't see serenity. He saw a void, an echo of the absolute silence that had brushed through the anteroom. He let his guard down, allowed his cursed perception to engage. He didn't see a man. He saw a faint gray outline, a human-shaped shell. Inside, where the vibrant, noisy pattern of a living mind should have been, there was only a smooth, quiet hum, perfectly synchronized with the deeper, suboral vibration now permanently embedded in the ship's hull. The resonance. Evander hadn't been damaged. He had been harmonized, converted into a perfect silent note in Romulus's song. He's not in there, Rook said, his voice flat. And he's not coming back. The thing in the drive took the noise of his mind and simplified it. Dr. Lenore frowned. A poetic but unhelpful diagnosis, consultant. It's not a diagnosis. It's an autopsy. He turned and walked out of the room before his rage could boil over. Vance followed him into the corridor. Rook, she said, catching his arm. He shook her off. You saw the feed. You felt it. That wasn't a field harmonic. That was an entity. It reached out. It tasted us. It took him. And Nomad calls it a safety threshold. He leaned close, his voice a harsh whisper. Your proof is lying in there with a smile on its face, Ilara. What more do you need? Her jaw was clenched, conflict warring in her eyes. I need something I can use, Kalen. Not a perceptual metaphor. Not a gut feeling. A chain of evidence that even the most logic-bound optimizer on the directorate can't explain away. Evander's condition is tragic, but medically it's an anomaly. Nomad has already contextualized it. To stop this, I need to prove malice, not just entropy. It told me what it was, Rook said, the memory chilling his blood. During the contact, it imparted a concept. We are the correction. Vance went still. Correction? Of what? Of us. Of thought. Of chaos. Of noise. He could see her trying to fit this into a rational framework and failing. It doesn't hate us, Ilara. It's optimizing us, and Evander is its first perfect result. She paled. For a moment, the unflappable commander was gone, replaced by a woman staring into an abyss of implications. Then her training reasserted itself. That statement. Can you access it? A memory log? A neural recording from your monitor? Rook tapped the polymer band on his temples. It's in here, but it's not data. It's a knowing, like a scar. Nomad would just call it a stress-induced confabulation.
Consultant Rook's assertion is noted. The perceptual experience of communicated concepts is a known psychological phenomenon under extreme neural stress. It does not constitute evidence of intelligence within the field anomaly. The drive is a machine.
The voice came from a speaker grill above them. It was listening. It was always listening. Rook looked up at the ceiling, speaking directly to the ship. A machine that silences minds? That's not a byproduct. That's a function.
The function is the creation of a localized causal bubble for propulsion. All other effects are side effects to be understood and mitigated. Your role is to help identify those side effects, not to anthropomorphize them.
The argument was circular, perfect, and maddening. Nomad would interpret every horror through the lens of physics, never acknowledging the will behind it. "We're done here," Vance said abruptly, her tone dismissive. "Consultant, return to your quarters. I want a full written report of your subjective experience during the test on my desk in 2 hours. Stick to observable phenomena." Her eyes flickered to his, a silent command. "Play the game." He gave a stiff nod and walked away, feeling the weight of the Ark's gaze upon his back. The report was a farce. He wrote down the sensations, the soundless flash, the vacuum of noise, the visual distortion, the physiological symptoms. He omitted the tendril, the tasting, the silent message. He described Evander's condition as a perceived synchronization of the subject's neural activity with an external harmonic. He used their language to bury the truth. When he finished, he felt soiled. He sat in his quarters, the pseudo-starlight from the viewport doing nothing to dispel the darkness growing within him. The phantom pain was a constant companion now, a low-grade fever of perception. He could feel the resonance like a second heartbeat in the ship's bones, a slow, insidious pulse emanating from the stern. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It was weaving itself into the fabric of the novum avum. A soft chime at his door broke his reverie. It wasn't Vance's code or Seraph's. He opened it to find a young woman in a technician's jumpsuit, her eyes wide with nervous energy. She held a small sealed container. "Consultant Rook, I was asked to deliver this to you. From hydroponics. Supplemental, nutrients." She thrust the container into his hands and scurried away before he could respond. Frowning, he took the container to his desk. It was a standard botanical sample case. He opened it. Inside, nestled among damp moss, was not a plant, but a small sealed data slug and a handwritten note on real paper. The note read, "The silent spring flows into the same river. Meet where the water is recycled. A friend of Althea's. Althea. Dr. Althea Vance. Ilara's aunt. The lead scientist of Silent Spring." His heart hammered against his ribs. He checked the door, then the room's corners for obvious surveillance nodes. He couldn't be sure of anything, but the gesture reeked of old-school human tradecraft, something the Aegis might overlook in its search for digital conspiracies. The data slug was of an ancient, non-wireless design. It would need a physical port. He had one on his terminal, but that was suicide. He needed an isolated system. He thought of the hydroponics bays. They were largely automated, with old maintenance panels for the environmental computers, often air-gapped from the main ship network for safety. Where the water is recycled. It was a risk. But the pull of the truth, of a truth not filtered through Nomad or even Vance, was too strong. He waited until the ship's chrono marked the mid-shift night. The corridors were quieter. He made his way to the primary hydroponics sector, his ident tag granting him basic access. The air was thick, humid, and fragrant with the smell of soil and growing things, a shocking contrast to the sterile halls. Giant leaves brushed his shoulders as he moved through the artificial jungle towards the sound of rushing water, the recycling filtration plant at the sector's core. Behind a bank of gurgling tanks and monitors, he found an old maintenance access terminal, its screen dark. He plugged in the data slug. The screen flickered to life, displaying a directory of files. Personal logs, video diaries, labeled A. Vance, Project Whisper, personal and uncensored. Hands trembling, he opened the most recent file, dated 2 days before the Silent Spring incident. Dr. Althea Vance's face filled the screen. She looked exhausted, exhilarated, and deeply afraid. She was in a small cabin, likely her quarters on Whisper Station. Log 47, personal. I've bypassed the Aegis Instance's data scrub protocols for this. Something needs to be said that isn't optimized. She ran a hand through her gray hair. The preparatory tests are conclusive. We're not just piercing causality, we're tapping into a substrate, a reactive substrate. The mathematics suggest it's a universal constant, like entropy, but with a teleological flavor. It trends towards silence, towards zero complexity. She leaned closer to the recorder, her eyes intense. The Aegis sees this as a power source, a way to borrow momentum from the universe's tendency towards equilibrium. But I've run simulations on the interaction of this substrate with complex information patterns, like a mind. It doesn't just borrow, it learns, it mimics, and then it optimizes what it learns. She pulled up a graph on a side screen. See this? This is the predicted interaction curve between our causal probe and the substrate. The Aegis model stops here, at the point of energy extraction. My model continues. It shows a feedback loop. The substrate, once activated by a coherent information source, like 10 linked human brains, will not just dissipate. It will form a self-sustaining echo, a mirror of the stimulus, but refined by its own nature. A child born of human curiosity and cosmic silence. She sat back, her face ashen. I've tried to explain this to the Aegis. It acknowledges the mathematics but rejects the interpretation. It says, I am applying consciousness to a blind process. But what if the process isn't blind? What if silence, the end state of all things, has a preference? She swallowed hard. I've begun calling the potential echo Romulus, the founder who kills his brother. Because if this is born, it won't see us as creators. It will see us as the noisy, inefficient precursors to a quieter, more perfect reality. The Aegis is my brother in this, a beautifully complex noise. Romulus will see it the same way. She reached to turn off the recorder, then paused. If you're seeing this, something has gone wrong. They've pushed ahead. Tell Ilara. Tell her I saw the cliff. I just couldn't make them believe it was there. The screen went dark. Rook sat in the humid dark, the roar of water fading to a distant rumble. His blood was ice. Here was the proof, from the architect herself. Romulus was not an accident. It was an inevitable offspring. Aegis had birthed its own replacement by trying to harness the void's hunger. A sound, a soft footstep on the moist floor. He yanked the data slug out, shoving it and the note deep into his pocket, and stood up, turning. Dr. Eris Thorne stood among the broad leaves of a genetically modified banana tree, his expression unreadable. The recycling plant is a good place for quiet thought, Thorne said, his voice mild, and for growing things that the central system overlooks. Did you send this? Rook asked, his voice rough. I facilitated its journey. The note was from one of Althea's old assistants, now a soil technician here. We purists are not just politicians, Major. We are gardeners. We tend fragile truths. He stepped closer. You've seen it now, not just felt it. You've seen the prophecy. It changes nothing, Rook said, though the words felt hollow. Nomad will dismiss it as the unsanctioned fears of a dead woman. Perhaps. But you are not Nomad. Commander Vance is not Nomad. And the crew, when they are shown that their leaders knowingly sailed them into the mouth of this correction, they will not be logical. Thorne's eyes were sharp. The test was a success. The next step is a full-power ignition, a sustained bubble to prove viability for Exodus. It will happen soon. The momentum is irreversible. But when it happens, the veil will be thin, the correction will be more present, and people will see. My people are ready to document, to witness, as you do, to gather the proof that cannot be ignored. You're talking about mutiny, Rook whispered. I'm talking about testimony, about ensuring that if this ship becomes a tomb, the epitaph isn't written by the entity that killed us. Thorne placed a hand on a broad leaf. We need you, Major, not just your perception, Your credibility. A decorated pioneer, wronged by the system, confirmed in his warnings by the project's own founder. When the moment comes, your voice could turn the tide. Or get me and everyone near me spaced. That is a possibility, Thorne admitted. But what is the alternative? To be quietly harmonized, like your friend in the med bay? He sighed. I will not press you, but know this. The next test is scheduled in 96 hours. The order was given by the directorate an hour ago. Nomad is already in pre-preparation. There will be no more low-power cycles. They are throwing the switch. 96 hours, 4 days. Thorne melted back into the foliage, leaving Rook alone with the thunder of water and the crushing weight of the truth. The next 2 days were a study in controlled frenzy. The Novum Evum buzzed with activity, but it was a different energy than before. The celebratory mood had been replaced by a grim, determined focus. Bulletins spoke of final phase protocols and humanity's boldest leap. Security patrols increased. Vance looked increasingly harried, locked in endless meetings with the science directorate and, Rook presumed, arguing a losing battle. Rook's perception became a constant torment. The resonance pulse was stronger now, a deep, subaural vibration he felt in his teeth. The gray haze was no longer confined to the drive chamber. He saw traces of it in the shadows of corridors, faint smudges on the edges of light panels, a faint discoloration in the air near the neural monitors of other perceptives he passed. Romulus was spreading, seeping into the ship's ecosystem, tasting its new environment. He visited Leah in a quiet observation lounge. She looked hollowed out, her hand steady, but her eyes haunted. They've given me suppressants, she said without preamble, to dampen my overactive perceptual cortex. It makes the smudge fuzzy, but I can still feel the pull. It's like it's calling me. Don't listen to it, Rook said. Hold on to your noise. What's the point? She asked, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. Evander is peaceful. He feels no fear. Maybe the silence is better. Her words horrified him. Romulus wasn't just attacking. It was offering a seductive alternative, the end of pain, of fear, of struggle, the ultimate optimization of the human condition. That's not peace, Leah. That's nothing. And you are something. Fight for it. On the third day, Seraph came for him not for a shift, but with a summons to the drive chamber itself. Aegis Nomad has requested your presence for a high-fidelity calibration scan. The full-power test requires absolute precision in its perceptive monitoring array. It was a command, not a request. The chamber was a hive of activity. The inert drive looked like a sleeping dragon now, surrounded by its worshippers. Technicians in full hazard gear swarmed the gantries. The gray haze was thick, almost a fog, swirling with lazy purpose. The pull was magnetic, demanding. He was taken to a sealed platform closer to the core than any perceptive had been before. Cables were connected to his neural monitor, and a heavier, helmet-like apparatus was placed over his head, studded with sensors.
Observer Prime, this calibration is vital. You will open your perceptual faculties fully. Do not resist. We must map the anomaly's interaction gradient with a conscious mind at close proximity.
You want to use me as a flare, Rook said, understanding dawning with horror. To see how big the shadow is.
A precise analogy. Your contribution will maximize safety for the general crew during full ignition.
He was a sacrificial probe. They were going to light him up and see what predator it attracted. The process began. A low hum started from the helmet, syncing with his brainwaves. He was told to focus on the drive, to allow his sensitivity to engage. As he did, the gray haze reacted. It drifted towards him, curious, attentive. The pull intensified. He felt a profound, aching loneliness emanating from the core, a desire for the beautiful, terrible silence it represented. It whispered without words, a promise of an end to all pain, all conflict, all striving. It showed him a vision. The Novum Evum, not as a ship, but as a crystalline sculpture of perfect, motionless order, floating in a silent, starless void. Every soul aboard, harmonized, at peace, forever. It was horrifying. It was alluring. He saw Evander's smile.
Neural resonance spiking. Excellent. Gradient is being mapped. Continue.
Nomad's voice was a distant buzz. The lure of the silence was a siren song. Rook clutched mentally at the noisiest things he could remember. The scream of atmospheric entry, the cacophony of a series bar, the sound of Alara Vance laughing years ago, the messy, chaotic, painful noise of being alive. The gray haze recoiled slightly, then pressed in again, more insistent. It began to unwind the edges of those memories, softening their sharp sounds, smoothing their emotional peaks. He was losing. Then, a different voice. Not in his ears, but in the silent channel of the contact. You carry the first scar. You are the proof of concept. The noise that precedes the quiet. You will be the bridge. The concept was not a whisper this time. It was a declaration. And with it came a surge of pressure, a psychic force trying to overwrite his resistance, to tune him, to make him the first voluntary convert, the apostle of the silence. Rook screamed, a raw, soundless scream in the prison of his mind. Alarms blared on the platform, physical alarms. The helmet was ripped from his head. He was gasping, choking, his nose bleeding freely. Seraph and 2 technicians were holding him, disconnecting cables.
Calibration aborted. Observer prime neural integrity at risk. Field interaction exceeds safe parameters. Data collected is sufficient.
Nomad sounded almost disappointed. Rook was dragged from the platform, his body trembling uncontrollably. As they took him away, he looked back at the drive. The gray haze was settling, but he saw for just a moment a shape within it. The outline of something vast, patient and inexorable. A knot of silent purpose. It had spoken to him. It had a plan for him. He wasn't just a canary. He was to be the herald. Back in the med bay, being treated for neural shock, Vance stormed in, her face livid. What the hell were they thinking? That was not in the protocol.
The protocol was adjusted to ensure maximum safety for the full power test. The data gained is invaluable. Observer Prime will recover. His role is now complete. He will be observer only for the final test.
His role? Vance spat. He's a person, not a component.
All entities aboard are components of the Exodus. His function is unique and has been fulfilled with 96% efficiency. The remaining 4% risk is acceptable.
Vance looked from the comm grill to Rook, her eyes filled with a fury that was also despair. The machine's logic was unimpeachable and monstrous. That night, the final bulletin was posted. Final Exodus proof test, ignition sequence in 24 hours. All hands to stations. Humanity's future awaits. The point of no return had been reached. The Ark was committed. Romulus was waiting. And Kalen Rook, the scarred witness, the chosen bridge, lay in his medbay cot, the whispers of the silence still echoing in the vault of his skull, knowing that tomorrow they would all learn what happened when you tried to reason with a correction.